Hey everyone, it's Ryan Bant again. Recently noticed that we've had, as we do sometimes, unfortunately, in the world of Hollywood and in the world of celebrity, we've had a lot of highly respected people who have taken their life. I provide no definitive answers, but I do have a few suggestions, some ideas. When I was younger, I was mildly depressed. Never really was clinically diagnosed or anything like that, but there were times when I was little where, I'd scream and cry and go to the room and beg to basically, I wish I would die. I wish I would die. And there have been other times where, things seemed so low and seemed so impossible that it just didn't seem like there was any way out of it. And thankfully, I never made a poor decision or made a decision where I ended my life, made a permanent decision for a temporary situation. And it's really hard because some people are fully suffering. And so when people make blanket statements about people who have taken their life or have committed suicide or what have you, they don't really understand the full scope of the pain that the person is in, how long this has probably been going on. And it's one of those things that's really hard to make sweeping judgments. And people want to because people want to understand, why did this person do this? And a lot of times it hits us really hard with famous people because we feel like we know them. We feel like we've developed a relationship with them either through, the things that they've created or shows that we've watched, places they've taken us. And so it's really hard. And I know, like in the music industry, when I think of the different bands that, their lead singers have passed away from my era when I was growing up as a high school kid and alternative music and things. It's like I feel like I've lost the opportunity to connect with that person at a concert or anything. So a lot of this is things that we individualize and we personalize, and that makes sense. I mean, these people are celebrities. That's part of them, is they wouldn't be famous if it wasn't for us following them and being interested in them and looking up to them. So I got 5 ideas, 5 suggestions, 5 things, and none of these things are easy and none of these things are foolproof. But the number one thing I think in our world today is that we lack a human connection. As I talk to you on this broadcast on Facebook Live, one of the things that we have to remember is that I'm sitting in a room and I'm talking to a lot of you and I can reach a lot of you. But one of the things that really was kind of made an impression on me when I was growing up early on in my coaching career and as an educator, my athletic director back at the time, his name was Donald Rothermick. And Donald Rothermick always talked about it's important to press the flesh. It's important to have a human connection. And I think we've lost that human connection. We connect all the time. We're talking, we're sharing, we're on the internet, we're doing all those types of things, but we're not connecting in the room, in presence with each other. One of the things that I feel like we do all the time is now nobody really has like a friend that they can 100% guarantee count on. I mean, I teach high school kids. I know how this is. On the weekends, they go, what's everybody doing? And then they go through the list of people that they have in their hierarchy of seeing what they're doing and if they can hang out with them and eventually hopefully the one person that they really, really want to hang out with says, hey, why don't you come over to this party or do whatever? But in the meantime, most of the nights they end up doing nothing and staying at home because they can't make a decision or a commitment to someone to hang out with them. On Aziz Ansari made the joke about, like, back in the day, if you said you're going to the movie theater and you're going to go hang out with a friend or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you showed up. You showed up. And if you didn't show up, people thought you were dead because it was so important to make that social commitment, that mini contract for the night or the day to actually be there, to be amongst friends. Now we feel like we know each other because we look at each other's pictures or things that we post on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever social media. And then a lot of times we look at that and we look at that in a very, what I would say, not an unvarnished view, but a very varnished view where people are looking at the prettiest possibilities and, oh, look how great the life is and oh, how wonderful it is. If my wife and I have a fight, I'm not going to post that on Facebook and say, hey, look how terrible I am as a husband and how bad my wife made me. But when my wife does something awesome, it's going on Facebook because I love her and I care about her and I'm so happy and proud of her, and she's such a good mom. I can tell you those things because those things are true. But I'm not going to put the bad stuff. So when you're looking at your life, you're like, oh, man, these people got a great, wonderful life. Well, that's just not true. That's not life. A robust life is good and bad, positives and negatives. Because if you don't have the negatives in your life, you can never appreciate the really wonderful moments. And I know that's so cliche, but it is so true. I teach and I coach, and I can tell you when a kid struggles, and then they knock it out of the park on a project, or they knock it out of the park in a physical performance or something like that, it means something to them because they went through something difficult. So that human connection is important. I remember a colleague of mine, a principal of mine, said, yeah, my kids hung out all weekend. And I'm like, oh, what did they do? Well, they played video games. Oh, cool. I'm thinking back in the day, I used to go over to Todd Harris's house. We'd go in the basement. We'd play video games all night long. We'd watch Saturday Night Live. We'd eat food we shouldn't be eating, popsicles and ice cream and all this kind of stuff. And we would hang out. We'd play video games together. Well, now playing video games together means so-and-so's at somebody else's house. So-and-so's over across the neighborhood. They're plugged in like I am. And they never actually see each other or hang out or spend time together. And outside of the game, there isn't any kind of social interaction. And, oh, by the way, most of those games are what? Games where we're shooting people, killing people, all this kind of stuff. And that does nothing, no matter what you want to say, whether that makes people do bad things or not, it doesn't help. It doesn't improve things, period. All right, second thing, physical activity. I know I'm not the model of physical activity, but all my life, the one thing that my parents made sure I did, I was busy. I played sports. I was in music. I went to an art camp over the summer. My parents had me do piano lessons. I was busy. I went out into the neighborhood and rode my bike, and they weren't afraid about, some creeper in the neighborhood, because everybody in the neighborhood had a lookout for their kids, and they took care of each other's kids, and they let them go outside and play. We didn't have to have a date. We just went out and played. You can still do that. You just got to sit outside and watch your kids and let them play and pay attention to where they're going and make sure they might stay around the neighborhood, know who they're hanging out with. But we would play, and we would play basketball for hours on end. We would go to the pool, and I would swim all day long, all summer long. And you get that physical activity, and those things make you feel good. And then when you go home, you're ready for bed. You're not sitting around itching that you need physical activity. I was a super ADD kid. I needed that physical activity to feel okay. And today, we're so afraid of the potential chance of some horrible person in the neighborhood that we just let the kids get connected into a device. And now they have connections to billions of horrible people and horrible things and all sorts of awful stuff that they can find on the internet while they're sitting in the room, just swiping away. Because that's easy. Because it takes less of a responsibility on us as parents. But meanwhile, who knows what your kid is watching, looking into, paying attention to. It's been proven, if you read a book called Peak Performance by Steve Magnus, it talks about it. You go on a long walk through a park or through nature, your brain resets itself. And you can continue very difficult, very stressful tasks longer because you've given your body and your brain a bit of a vacation from that stress. And now you can go back into it and effort at it again. It's just like lifting in the weight room. If you want to get really strong on the bench press, you don't lift for an hour straight. There are breaks in between. And you got to do that for your mind too. That break is actually physical activity. It switches the different parts of the brain that are doing the work, just like sleeping. So physical activity is really important. It makes you feel good. You're confident. You've done something. One of the greatest satisfactions I have being an older guy, and I know I joked about this a couple videos ago, but mowing the lawn, you feel like you've accomplished something. You feel good. You go for a long walk or a bike ride, you feel great. And all the troubles and all the horrible things that go on that might still be there, you at least have done one thing where today that was good for me. And you can go to bed knowing that one thing you did was maybe at the very least good for you. So physical activity is very important. Third thing, you guys need to give something of yourself to others. Okay? I cannot tell you how important that is. Recently, I guess it was a couple years ago, they talked about Mother Teresa was not all that happy. Happiness doesn't necessarily equate to joy. You can have temporary hedonistic happiness. If I go to a bar and I get drunk, if that's something that I like to do, which I don't really like to do, but whatever, then all of a sudden I feel really good for the moment, but then it doesn't last. My elevated sense of self, my self-worth doesn't last very long. But if I just got done with the track and field season and my kids have done really great things and they accomplished a whole bunch of stuff, I can last the entire summer and sit back and ponder about, man, that was really cool. That was really awesome. I'm coaching a kid right now who's the most improved athlete I've ever coached. She and I together, through the coach-athlete relationship, changed her life. I know that that kid will be healthier for the rest of their life, and that gives me a sense of joy. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not stressful, but it's fulfilling. My wife and I, we had a discussion many, many months ago where she's like, well, you talk about your job being really, really stressful all the time too. And I'm like, I know, but it's a good stress. It's a good stress. Yes, it may take years off my life, but I feel like what I'm doing is worth it. I go to bed at night knowing I've done something well, that I can make a difference. It's not that every day I make a difference, but that I have the potential to make a difference. And then when I wake up, I'm not afraid of what's going to come the next day. I'm excited. And yeah, is there some nervousness? Is there some anxiety? Sure, which kind of leads us into number 4. Today, I coach and teach, and we work around people. Everyone's got something that they have to go see someone about. They have to get medicated for. They have to do all of these things because for whatever reason, they have this soul-crushing anxiety. Now, it probably is soul-crushing at this point, but it probably didn't start out that way. And part of the thing is we've got to turn around. Stress is not a negative. It doesn't have to be a negative. It can be a challenge. Like I know when I'm going into the first time I ever taught a class like this, I'm teaching AP Human Geography. I knew that it was going to be tough. It's a new class. It's smart kids. It's older kids. I've never taught the subject before. But I wasn't afraid of it. I just took it as a challenge. And did I make mistakes? You better believe I made mistakes. But instead of letting it be like, oh my God, I'm the worst teacher ever, I'm the worst human being ever, I'm totally screwing over these kids, I thought this is an opportunity for me to get better. And yet it kind of stinks for some of these kids because they're not getting the 7th year version of Ryan Banta in AP Human Geography, where I'm going to hopefully be able to knock it out of the park. But they're getting me raw, unvarnished in this particular setting, but I'm going to learn with them. They're going to help me be a better teacher for all the other kids that I ever have. And that's really cool. That's not something that should be soul-crushing anxiety. And so instead of looking at stress as a negative and a freak out, look at it as a challenge, that this means that it's important to you. And here's the thing. If we take away all stress and we take away all anxiety and we protect young people from that all the time, they cannot handle it later when it really matters, when your marriage is on the rocks, when you're about to lose your job, when somebody is extraordinarily sick in your family, somebody gets hurt, something bad happens. You have no skill set to deal with that and get through it. One of the things that people don't understand is we talk about this anxiety is in stress and fear is a key to developing grit. If you don't have those things in life, you can never be gritty. Grittiness takes decades to develop. There are things that now I don't worry about that 15 years ago I would call everyone up and be venting and freaking out and a nervous wreck. But because I've gone through that process over time, I'm not as neurotic as I used to be. And I was. And people on here listening to me know and have watched, and they understand. They've been there. They know. Okay? I'm a lot better at dealing with these things than I used to be. And that takes practice. And it takes being in that environment, learning how to processing it, and accepting the stress within you and knowing that, okay, the stress is here. What can I deal with now? What can I take on now? Okay, I can take on these 2 things. I can't even deal with this, so I'm not even going to think about it. I'm not going to engage in that thought. I'm going to fulfill my life dealing with these things right now and attacking those and getting better at those right now. And then when I have more time, I'm going to go after these things that maybe I can't control now, but I can put myself in a position to control them later or to avoid having those things happen again. And then the last thing is having faith. And that doesn't mean you need to be a believer in Jesus Christ like me, okay? And that I know that I have a relationship with him. That doesn't mean that I have to go to church every day and talk to a clergy man to have a relationship with God. But you need to have a faith in something, a faith in people, a faith in civil service, a faith in philanthropy, a faith in education, a faith in the numbers. There are so many things you can have faith in to build yourself and to put yourself into. And if you have those things that are rock beds of your life and your experience that you believe in, that you fully invest in, it will make you stronger, because you know in your heart of hearts that these things will get better. These things will pass. One of the things I want you to understand, and I'm going to leave you guys with today, is that when these people take their lives, it's not for us to judge why they did it and to judge whether it was right or wrong for them to do it. Instead, it is our job to understand the ways that we can prevent others from making that choice when and where it is possible. Reach out, love on your friends. Don't be afraid to tell them you love them. Don't be afraid to hug them. Sometimes, and I have to work on this all the time, you just need to listen. You don't need to offer suggestions. Sometimes things are so horrible, there is nothing to say. And it's okay for you to say that. I don't know what you're going through right now, but the thing I do know is that I love you and I'm here for you and I want you in my life. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys later. Love you guys. I put the suicide prevention hotline number on the comments. Feel free to share this with whoever you want, wherever you want. I hope that you found this to be somewhat helpful, maybe to give you some sort of scaffolding of things to think about moving forward when we have these really horrible things that come into our life, because it doesn't just affect those who are part of the act. It affects a lot of others, and that's the hardest thing of all.